The longest government shutdown in U.S. history comes to an end finally after more than 40 days. What will this mean for air travel and all those furloughed workers? Also, remember that deadly typhoon that killed hundreds in the Philippines last week? Well, it brought its cousin, a super typhoon. We're going to talk about the destruction those two typhoons have caused, and we also have an update on that infamous Louvre heist in Paris. Back with us is Lisa Daftari of the Foreign Desk, joining us from Los Angeles. Hello, Lisa.
Hello, Jeanette. Great to be back with you.
Okay, Lisa, first things first here, the big news. So, Senate Democrats and Republicans have reached a deal to reopen government after the longest shutdown in U.S. history. So, tell us what just happened over the weekend.
Yeah, it was crazy. Both sides came up with some sort of proposal to end the shutdown. Both sides appearing to want this to come to an end. They broke records, so it's an embarrassing moment for American lawmakers on both sides, of course, to not have government workers being paid, not being efficient, and you have all of these outstanding foreign policy issues. But how can you deal with them when you have this major domestic issue looming? So proposals shared, and in the end, we had some Democratic senators come over to the Republican side and say, you know what, let's make this work. And they came up with a compromise to reopen. Of course, this is only until January 30th of 2026 will revisit the issue. But until then, we will have an open government.
Wow. How long do you think it will take to get everything up and running again?
Yeah, that's a good question because I know in terms of flights, for example, major
Mm.
airports have already been put on alert. So Los Angeles Airport, LAX, being one of the major airports here in the United States, they have already said to expect delays through and after Thanksgiving. So it's something that kind of trickles, and the issue has been going on for a while and will probably continue for a bit longer after the reopening. But I think the fact that this announcement was made right before a Monday morning gives people some momentum. And you have to remember, we're going into Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year where things are slow, not in terms of traffic and not in terms of the economy, but in terms of people taking vacations and wanting to get out and wanting to make trips and wanting to put food on the table. We have a lot of the food stamp system was kind of in question as well. So I think it's good for the morale of the country to get back and running. But again, that record was broken. So I think enough was enough, and I'm glad that both sides were able to come to some sort of understanding.
Yeah, exactly. What was it that was holding the Dems back from voting originally? I understand it was something to do with healthcare, Obamacare, health insurance companies.
Exactly. That's kind of the what they're saying was the point of contention, where the two sides couldn't really see eye to eye, was to have the holdovers from the Obamacare system. It's an interesting thing because every time something like this happens, it's like all of this other baggage comes onto the table, and they try to make deals because of certain issues that they couldn't see eye to eye on before, and they hold that as collateral, which is unfortunate because again, you have the military, you have the airports, you have national security, so many people that are furloughed, and again, thankfully they were able to see eye to eye and at least temporarily reopen the government.
Right. So we had some Democrats vote against their own party and just
Right,
go with the Republicans to let's get the government back running and getting people paid again.
right.
No, great news. Okay, Lisa, President Trump on Sunday claimed that a dividend of at least $2,000 a person will be paid to all Americans except for high income people. He's saying the country is now wealthy as a result of his tariff policies. He's saying who are against tariffs are fools because the U.S. is now the richest country in the world with almost no inflation and a record stock market. And he's saying that 401ks are the highest ever. So, Lisa, is this true? Are tariffs making America richer, or is it doing damage to some industries?
Well, it could be both, right? And I think that that's pretty much what we're looking at. If it's a micro macro thing. If you listen to Donald Trump, and he has a compelling, not so sweet, but compelling way of expressing in communicating what these tariffs are doing. If you recall, Donald Trump, before he even thought about becoming president in the 90s, he would go on local New York news stations and talk about how he would, if he were in office, would even the playing field, and that the Americans are being, used, and the other countries are opportunists. And really, this is something. This is what he's passionate about, is evening the playing field. So when you look at the tariffs from a macro standpoint, from an America first standpoint, then you realize, yes, this is what we need to do in order to even the playing field. But when you look at individual relationships like the one between the United States and Canada, or if you look at individual sectors, businesses, it's very difficult on them. I know I have many friends who are in the import export business, and they talk about how they've been brutally affected by the tariffs, where prices are so high that they can't really justify it to their customers, and it just doesn't make sense anymore. And they're trying to pivot into other businesses, and again, it could be both. So when Donald Trump comes out and says, listen, come with me and I'll give you a $2,000 check, he's trying to bring the country together to say, this was something I did for all Americans, and now we will all benefit from it. So it's going to take a while before Americans truly, not because of the check that he is offering, but truly see the impact of the tariffs in the actual day-to-day economy.
Yeah, definitely. How will those dividends be paid out? I'm hearing that it could be tax decreases, like no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, those types of things,
Yeah, perhaps, or an actual check that he refers to, because look,
right?
that's what really riled up the Americans during the pandemic. If you recall, it was receiving a check from the government, knowing that the government had their back, and it invigorated the economy. And I think Trump is a businessman, and he knows. If that $2,000 check showing up at someone's doorstep in whatever format, whether it's a tax break or some sort of rebate or a check, it will do a lot of good, particularly going into the holidays.
No, definitely. Lisa, last week we spoke about that deadly typhoon that hit Asia. It killed hundreds of people in the Philippines and then moved on to Vietnam. Well, now it looks like a second super typhoon has hit the poor Philippines. So, what's the latest there now?
Yeah, it looks like over 1 million people have been evacuated. I think that's the big number. In terms of casualties, it's in the single digits right now. But the fact that this is
For the
such
second one, right?
right now, for the second one, we had over 1 million people evacuated, and in the single digits for now. We hope that it remains that way since people have been removed from harm's way. But if you're looking at really natural disaster of this caliber, the amount of damage it will do is it's really unthinkable. But again, this is something that this part of the world deals with. Again, the fact that there was two back to back like this is truly horrific, for that country to be devastated the way that it is. But I'm sure that they will get help from the international community, and hopefully be able to go back to their homes and to rebuild in a meaningful way.
Yeah, certainly. Absolutely. Okay, so looking at another part of the country here. Yeah, over to Israel and Gaza. So Hamas, it looks like, has handed over the remains of an Israeli soldier who was killed 11 years ago in 2014. And his body was held as a bargaining chip for over 4,000 days. Lisa, what can you tell us about this?
Yeah, imagine this family and what terror they lived, not just in finding out that their loved one was brutally murdered the way that he was, but that his body was not returned. So, not having that peace, not having that closure for 11 years, you're
Yeah.
dealing with a terror organization that really it lives to terrorize. Uh, you know, uh, you can't define this in a normal, sane person's frame of mind, and that's truly the way that when you look at these young children, college students or high school students or whomever they are on the streets of America and London and Toronto, supporting terrorism. And chanting, their chants and supporting their candidates and really bringing that to the West, it boggles the mind. I mean, this is the type of really this horrific terror that they want to unleash on not just Israel, not just the United States, but really the entire West. You look at Europe, you look at Canada, you look at the United States, you look at these lone wolf characters that have been radicalized by the same ideology. But we're happy for this family that has finally gotten their loved one back, the remains. They can have closure, they can have a proper burial of whatever's left of this body and remains. And there still are 4 hostage bodies that remain in Hamas possession that were killed in either on October 7th, 2023, or since then in this war. But we know that they have died in the hands of Hamas. What was promised in the ceasefire were 20 points. One of them was to give back the living and dead hostages, which Hamas has not fulfilled its promise in doing that. Another very important 2 points of the 20 points were to disarm and to dismantle Hamas in Gaza, and that also remains to be seen. They just doubled down over the weekend, saying that they will not disarm. And that's really the fear that we have, is that during this time period, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, they're only going to use this time to restock, refuel, and repurpose themselves to this war against Israel.
Mm. Lisa, some more tragic, traumatic also news overseas. Thousands of civilians have been massacred over the past week in Sudan by Arab militias. So this is the latest horror in a civil war that's left millions of people displaced and starving.
Yeah, it's horrific. This is truly a genocide. This is truly a war on innocent people. Many Christians dying as well. A true famine, a true genocide, and no one's talking about it. And I thank you, Jeanette, for bringing it up, because we really don't focus on that part of the world, believing that this kind of violence is almost organic to their lives, and to, this is what happens every few years there. But really, they need our help. They need our support. They need us to highlight these stories to get them the help that they need. But they are being completely decimated by this Islamic terror that rocks so much of Africa and the Middle East. And until we eradicate this ideology, and they can come up with any sort of banner or name, whether it's Hamas or Hezbollah or ISIS or whatever it may be, but it's all the same ideology, and to really wreak havoc on the lives of Christians and Jews and anyone who won't fold under their own, under these banners. They could even be moderate Muslims. So really, it's important to focus on other parts of the world as well. Sudan, in this case, really, really horrific human rights war going on over there.
Yeah. Lisa, an update to the crazy Louvre story. So a report has come out regarding that weak. So basically, there was a weak security password that allowed that $102 million jewel heist at the Louvre in Paris. And get this, it was revealed that the password for the core security system was actually Louvre, Louvre. Anyone could have guessed it. This weakness was actually revealed in 2014 in a cybersecurity audit. So, Lisa, the story continues to play out like a movie, a comedy, actually.
Right. And Jeanette, what's funny is, if this is true, the fact that they didn't even change their password for the last 11 years is crazy. Yeah. I mean, even if it was a simple password, okay, maybe you want to do Louvre 10, 11, 12, like put an exclamation point at the end. I mean, it wasn't even, whatever Gmail or Hotmail or Yahoo, whatever system you have, platform you're using, it will alert you every so often to change your password for security purposes. Now, I haven't seen, a high level verification on this, so I'm going to say if it's true, but I did see it in a few reputable news sources. So I will go with this assumption that this is what happened, and this was the weak link in allowing those the robbers to get in there. But look, they were caught, and it is a great story. And we talked about this last week. Perhaps movies will be made about this, because it's just such a great, juicy story. But the fact that the weak password was incredibly weak is really just it's a rich part of the story, I would say.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. And I think that if you saw that in a movie, you'd be like, well, nobody would have their password be that.
Right.
So this is so far-fetched.
And then, what's crazy is, even if you try to, I don't know, come up with a password for, a clothing website, it'll say you need a capital, a lowercase, a symbol, a number, and you're sitting there, you're like, I just want to buy a t-shirt. I don't know why it's making me do all this. Why wasn't the platform for the Louvre as challenging them to give a better password? And that's why I don't know what the standards were there.
I know. Like it seems like it's a password that should be changed every 12 hours or something
Right,
even. Like
right,
that only the highest of security has access to it.
right.
Anyways, Lisa Daftari of the Foreign Desk, thanks so much for joining me
My
today.
pleasure. Great to be with you.